Cowboys have a chance to make a franchise-altering pick when they hold the number 10 pick in this year's NFL Draft. This is the Gray Area right here on 105.3 The Fan on YouTube. Of course, my name is Kevin Gray. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Kevin Gray Sports. Be sure to hit that subscribe button for all things 105.3 The Fan here on YouTube. And you can catch me on the weekends with my partner, the two-time Hall of Famer, Chris Arnold. The Dallas Cowboys have a chance to pick one of two corners from the SEC in Jaycee Horn or Patrick Surtain, or maybe potentially draft an offensive lineman and a guy in Rashawn Slater, or maybe your preference is that the Cowboys take a certain linebacker out of Penn State named Micah Parsons, seeing as the one that just recently retired, and Sean Lee was also from Penn State. There's a lot of choices that America's team could make going into this year's NFL annual selection meeting, otherwise known as the NFL Draft. But regardless of whether or not they take a linebacker or take one of these two corners out of the SEC, you got to take defense in this draft, right? You got a guy in Jaycee Horn who goes over 6 feet tall, can run a 4.39 40, goes over 200 pounds. You've got a 6'2", 4.46 running 200-pound corner and Patrick Surtain. Both of them have NFL bloodlines. Jaycee Horn, of course, is the son of former NFL wide receiver from the New Orleans Saints, Joe Horn. Meanwhile, Patrick Surtain participates in the family business just like his father did, Patrick Surtain, where he was an all-pro for the Miami Dolphins and the Kansas City Chiefs. Both of them are talented football players that probably will be available by the time you get to the number 10 overall pick for the Dallas Cowboys. There is a matter of preference, though, on whether or not you like one corner over the other. Jaycee Horn is a guy who travels, physically gifted, can get after the football, and also can be at times a little handsy. Meanwhile, you got a guy in Patrick Surtain who's the most polished corner in this draft, the most polished prospect probably in the top 10 outside of Trevor Lawrence, and gives you the idea that he can walk in on day one for a team that's winning right now and be a contributing member, and he gets to play alongside former Alabama teammate and corner himself, Trevon Diggs. So it's a matter of preference. We've heard from our very own Brian Broaddus that there's an internal battle going on inside the Star about whether or not coaches and scouts prefer Jaycee Horn versus coaches and scouts preferring a guy in Patrick Surtain. Either way, you can't go wrong. But for my money, I'm taking Patrick Surtain II. There's a reason why Alabama corners, for the most part, have succeeded in the National Football League, or safeties, linebackers, whatever the case, and whatever position you want to pick. I think most recently of a guy in Minkah Fitzpatrick who turned the fortunes around for a Pittsburgh Steelers football team with his ability to get after the football. You say, Kevin, well, Patrick Surtain reminds me a lot of a certain guy that we let go and walk to Miami, and a guy in Byron Jones. Maybe not the guy who's going to get a lot of interceptions, but is a solid corner. And I get that. And I understand the physical upside of a guy in Jaycee Horn and his ability to go get the football and create turnovers. You say, Kevin, that's what you want for a Cowboys defense that doesn't necessarily turn teams over. I get that too. But I also want the surest thing outside of Trevor Lawrence inside the top 10. And to me, that's Patrick Surtain. Now, the pros for Jaycee Horn also include the fact that Dan Quinn is really good friends with Will Muschamp. Now, Will Muschamp was the former head coach for Jaycee Horn at South Carolina. So Dan Quinn will know the ins and outs of this player like most won't be able to because of the relationship that he has with Will Muschamp. But if you're the Dallas Cowboys, a team that gave up a franchise record 34 passing touchdowns, gave up a franchise record 473 points, those 34 passing touchdowns that they gave up were the third worst in all of the National Football League, wouldn't you want a real sure thing in this year's draft? Well, you say, Kevin, Patrick Surtain may not be there. Jaycee Horn may not be there because we're hearing that teams are loving both Jaycee Horn and Patrick Surtain so much so that they may be willing to trade up to go get one of those two corners or both of them, and they may not be there. So what do you do then? Well, then I say you probably could take a look at a guy like Rashawn Slater, who could, as he gets more inside, can be a functional part of this offensive line, a talented part of this offensive line. We know that there's questions about the health of Tyron Smith and, of course, Leo Collins, who Stephen Jones, the executive vice president of the Dallas Cowboys, has said both of them are healthy and looking forward to the 2021 season. But there's also questions about the interior and being able to shore up that interior for a decade plus with a guy in Rashawn Slater would be an ideal pick also. So you couldn't go wrong with a Jaycee Horn, with a Patrick Surtain, or Rashawn Slater out of Northwestern. I don't necessarily want them to draft Micah Parsons at 10. There are some questions potentially off the field with him in terms of some maturity issues, but also drafting an off-ball linebacker may not be the best use of resources at the number 10 overall pick. You say, Kevin, there's questions about Leighton Vander Esch. His fifth-year option hasn't been picked up just yet. Questions of whether or not Jalen Smith will return next year for the Cowboys at all after he's due $7.2 million this year. I get all of that too. But to take a Micah Parsons, who's, yes, is physically gifted and an athletic freak, at number 10 doesn't seem like the best choice here. But what you cannot do if you're the Dallas Cowboys in general is reach at this pick. You're going to have an opportunity to get yourself a talented football player, whether it be the best defensive player available in this draft, potentially in a Patrick Surtain, or the physical upside in a Jaycee Horn, or you may have a chance to trade back into the draft and still get that same player in Jaycee Horn if he's available there, given the fact that they've heard rumblings about the Patriots potentially wanting to move up to try and get into the top 10 to maybe go get one of these 5 quarterbacks that could be available within the first 10 picks. So if you're the Cowboys, you're sitting in a perfect and prime position to either get yourself a talented football player or trade back a little bit into the first round, still get a really phenomenal player, but also add assets in terms of draft capital and maybe go get you Stephon Gilmore. I'm just saying, I'm throwing it out there. But either way, the Cowboys should not have to reach at this pick. We've all heard about the infatuations with Kyle Pitts and whether or not he could fall to number 10. He ain't falling to 10. In fact, I think he's probably going to go to the Atlanta Falcons, although I think the Falcons should draft a quarterback. That's just me personally. But the draft really starts at 3 with the San Francisco 49ers and what they will decide to do after Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson are gone to the Jaguars and the Jets. Whatever the 49ers will do could potentially set off chaos within the first 10 picks of this year's NFL draft. But back to the Cowboys. Dan Quinn, also obviously Mike McCarthy, Jerry Jones, Will McClay, and Stephen Jones have a very serious decision to make here. Whether or not you continue to fortify an offensive line that's getting a little bit older, that has seen players such as Travis Frederick and others move on in recent years, or you have a chance to improve your defense where you saw promise out of a Trevon Diggs last year with 3 interceptions and then pair him with a running mate alongside of him to give you an idea that you have the foundational pieces in a new Dan Quinn defense who runs the cover 3 scheme with the high safety, of course. By the way, go get you one of those safeties at 44. Hello, Richie Grant out of UCF. Yeah, I would like him there too. But I digress. Get you one of these 2 corners to be a foundational piece alongside Trevon Diggs. Again, my preference would obviously be one in Patrick Surtain. But we'll see. It's going to be interesting to see how the Dallas Cowboys approach this because more so than not, they have a chance to hit a home run. And when you have 10 picks in this year's NFL draft, you can't afford to miss, especially given the salary cap situation that you're dealing with. So we'll see if Jerry, Stephen Jones, and also Will McClay and Mike McCarthy and Dan Quinn, who's going to have a lot of significant influence on this pick, eventually make the right decision. Depending on when you see this, the Dallas Cowboys could be in the best position to get the best defensive player available, maybe a terrific offensive lineman in Rashawn Slater, or may throw a curveball at you and get Micah Parsons. Either way, it's going to be a fun one. The Dallas Cowboys own the number 10 overall pick and have a chance to potentially change their franchise, especially defensively, by getting one of these top corners available. Go get Patrick Surtain. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Kevin Gray Sports. Be sure to hit that subscribe button for all things here for 105 Through the Fan on YouTube. And then you make sure you catch me on the weekends with my partner, the two-time Hall of Famer, Chris Arnold. It's been another episode of The Gray Area on 105 Through the Fans YouTube channel. We'll talk to you later. Peace.